The Growing Destinations podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Learn more about Minnesota's third largest city, which is home to Mayo Clinic and features wonderful recreational and entertainment opportunities, by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.
People in Rochester wanted to see businesses like Little Thistle and Forager survive the pandemic. So we saw a lot of support from just our local regulars and our consumers here in Rochester. So that meant a lot. So we've weathered the storm that way.
There's so many different things that we learned during COVID that we never had time to do. We just built like a robust system to go. We had our own delivery drivers. We basically made like a HelloFresh, but Forager version. We just did all these different things that in the 5 years we had been open prior, we just didn't have the opportunity to work on.
Welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast, where we take a deep dive into destination development and focus on a wide range of topics, from tourism and entertainment to economic development and entrepreneurism, and much more. I'm your host, Bill Von Bank. In 2019, Minnesota featured nearly 200 craft breweries. COVID-19 stifled the industry's growth and created challenges, but also opportunities. Today, I'm joined by two leaders in the craft beer industry from Rochester, Minnesota. Don Finnie is owner of Little Thistle Brewery, and Annie Henderson is owner of Forager Brewery. Both are collaborators who successfully pivoted and credit the support of their local community to help them weather the COVID storm. Don Finnie, Annie Henderson, welcome to the Growing Destinations podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Don, what was your motivation to open Little Thistle Brewery?
My husband and I have been involved in the brewing industry for almost 20 years, just home brewing, going to breweries in and out of the state. And we've really felt like Rochester could support another business, a place for people to gather. And our vision was to have a big outdoor space, someplace that families felt comfortable. We really feel like the brewing industry, he was a longtime home brewer and just loved craft beer. But craft beer really is a perfect mix of kind of art and science and all the things that make Rochester really cool. And so Little Thistle is kind of born out of that combination of art and science and creating a gathering place in our community.
And when did you open?
We opened August of 2018.
Annie, same question for you. What motivated you to open Forager Brewery?
I was not looking to open a brewery. I was hosting a political fundraiser at my house, and I wanted to only carry like locally sourced ingredients, local beer, local spirits, and I met Austin Jevney, our head brewer, at the Thirsty Belgian through a friend of a friend. They said that he was home brewing and made great beer. So I invited him to my party. Everyone at the party loved the beer. And so then I met with him and asked if he had ever considered opening a brewery. And he had said, I've kind of been down the road on this a couple times. Super challenging. I've hit a bunch of roadblocks. And so we started working together at the end of 2014. And we opened in September of 2015.
Is it mostly breweries start because something started in a garage or in a home?
I think so.
Yeah, mostly. People just get so into it that they're doing it. They're brewing so much beer that they have to go commercial with it or drink it all themselves.
Yeah, I don't think that there's like a lot of colleges that people go to brew beer. There's some universities that you can take coursework and get a degree, but it's not something that you just, I'm going to go to school to be a brewer for 4 years and then open a brewery.
Right.
So mostly a hobby that becomes a passion, then it becomes, there might be a business here?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Okay. Well, Annie, on top of Forager Brewery in Rochester, Minnesota, in 2019, you started another brewery, Humble Forager Brewery near Madison, Wisconsin. Talk us through that new business venture.
Because of the way the rules are in the state of Minnesota, Forager Brewery cannot do any sort of distribution. And so we had to start a second new company called Humble Forager. And actually, I own Forager Brewery, and I cannot own any part of Humble Forager. So Austin, our head brewer, started Humble Forager. So we started that company, and we brew mostly out of Octopi in Waunakee, Wisconsin, and then also up at Fair State. And we distribute to 18 states and 6 countries. It really took off because of COVID and we were packaging product. We opened and made our first beer in March of 2020. And so we put a bunch of beer in kegs, and then the next week, every restaurant got closed. So we threw that beer away and just started selling just cans of beer. And so that definitely expedited what we thought that business was going to become. So it's a distribution brewery, and then Forager is just a tap room.
Brewery 101 here. Don, Little Thistle is considered a tap room, and Forager, is it a brew pub?
It's a brew pub, yes.
What's the difference?
In the state of Minnesota, you can have a production facility, which is technically Little Thistle is a production facility as well, but we have a tap room. So a production facility is where beer is brewed, and then you can distribute out of a production facility. A tap room can include a brewery, which is what Little Thistle is, and we can only sell the beer that we brew on site, and we can distribute ourselves up into there's barrelages that have limits in the state. And a brew pub can hold a full liquor license. They have to have food, but they can't self-distribute. So unfortunately, Forager, that Annie's talking about in Rochester, cannot sell their beer outside of their four walls where we can. We can sell it to restaurants, we can sell it to liquor stores, but brew pubs can have a full liquor license and breweries can't, which is probably one of the most frequent questions that we get is why don't you have wine or spirits? Well, we can't legally in the state of Minnesota.
Can you both prepare and serve food?
We could. Brew pubs have to.
Okay.
Breweries can, but they typically don't. Like we work with local businesses that have food trucks or people can bring in their own food. So we have different options that we supply food that way.
Yeah, and when we were deciding what we were going to do, we really wanted to be a full restaurant. And so we thought it was important to go with the brew pub license because we wanted to be able to serve spirits and wine. Maybe someone in your group doesn't like to drink beer. So we just wanted to accommodate everyone with that full kitchen. So oftentimes I think we think of ourselves as a restaurant that makes really great beer. And other people in the nation might think of us as a brewery that has good food.
So for you to be able to distribute your wonderful tasting beer, that's how you formed the other brewery in Wisconsin.
Correct.
And then you had to rename it.
Yeah. There's all kinds of
stuff. There's a lot. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but thank you for the education. And Annie, I know you're entrepreneurial in nature, and so you have just in Rochester, Minnesota, you have the Forager tap room, you have a scratch kitchen with amazing food, and you recently opened a cafe. Can you tell us about that as well?
When we opened in 2015, we had a cafe that was a little more bare bones, craft coffee drinks, tea, and some baked goods. We then had a couple different tenants that we leased our coffee shop to, Fiddlehead, as well as Drifto. They were there for about 3.5 years. And so when Drifto decided to move out last summer, we decided that we wanted to take it back over and have it just be a little more cohesive. It was always a little confusing to consumers that there were multiple businesses that weren't maybe owned by the same group or didn't operate completely cohesively under one roof. And so we started a coffee shop that has house-made juices and smoothies, and we have a breakfast menu, and you can get those things at Forager or in the cafe, and there's just much better crossover. And we're able to utilize our morning staff to create those juices and smoothies, and it just kind of keeps our staff busier and just offers another thing for people that come in for lunch. So we opened in November, and it's been going really well so far.
November of 2021?
Yep.
Statewide, the industry has taken a hit. A 2021 report by the University of Minnesota Extension Office notes that after a decade of exponential growth in Minnesota's craft breweries, COVID-19 led to an 18% drop in economic activity during 2020. A tough hit for an industry that generated more than $1 billion in economic activity only a year earlier. How have your businesses fared over the past 2 years in a COVID environment?
At Forager, we have a scratch kitchen, and we have 30 people that work just in the kitchen. And so it was a priority of ours to make sure that those 30 people stayed employed. They all work there full time. And so we focused a lot on to-go food, but we were also able then to sell beer to go. So our food sales dropped about 75% in comparison to what it had been in the past. However, our staff got much smaller as well. So our overhead went down a bit. We've focused during that time on effectively hype beer that we could sell a lot of. So we would release a couple beers every Friday that people would drive down from the cities and buy 30 of them.
Wow.
And bring them back to their friends. And so we really focused on like having huge Fridays that would then help out the rest of the week when it was slow. But we had a ton of support from our regulars getting to-go food. We also started delivering our own food. We were also able to sell our beer as well as other people's beer during that time, just something that the state decided that restaurants could do. And since we are a restaurant and brew pub, we could do that. And so it was not great, but we made it through, and things have been going much better since we're back at 100% occupancy.
Great. Don?
Yeah, I think anytime you have to close your doors and not be able to serve the community that you had set out to serve is really difficult. And so same as Annie, we're fortunate to keep all of our full-time staff fully employed. They drastically changed what they did on the day-to-day. So we were only able to package and sell beer in a package form. So that was a lot more overhead, a lot more, the cost of the packaging, cost of labels, cost of, the machines that requires to put beer in a package. So that was quite different. We were fortunate that we have a really big outdoor space. We have almost 2 acres of property in kind of central Rochester. And so our outdoor space hadn't been utilized to the fullest capacity because we didn't have enough money to do that when we opened. So we hurried up and had a bunch of picnic tables made. And so that first summer when people felt like they were able to go back outside and socialize, we had that space ready for them. I think the support of the local Rochester community, we really felt that. We were a new business, and people in Rochester wanted to see businesses like Little Thistle and Forager survive the pandemic. So we saw a lot of support from just our local regulars and our consumers here in Rochester. So that meant a lot. So we've weathered the storm that way.
So I've heard a couple things, too, that come to mind from both of your answers. One is you had to pivot quickly and successfully, and also the loyalty of your customer base.
Yeah, there's so many different things that we learned during COVID that we never had time to do. We just built like a robust system to go. We had our own delivery drivers. We basically made like a HelloFresh, but Forager version. We just did all these different things that in the 5 years we had been open prior, we just didn't have the opportunity to work on. And so I think it was very good for our staff and for our ownership group to understand that there are different ways to do things. And if you need to, you can pivot and figure it out and make it through the storm, I guess.
I agree. I think every day was different. And I think the support of our local restaurant and bar community was really helpful as well. Like anytime, we have a pretty tight-knit group of people. It's a small enough town here in Rochester that, if we needed supplies or needed, I had a question on sanitizing products, I could call Annie or I could call one of the other business owners and say, hey, what are you doing about this? We did a few collaborative things. We hosted Blue Duck is a local restaurant here in Rochester that is more of a fine dining restaurant, but they pivoted and had a food truck. And so we invited their food truck to spend the winter at our brewery last year. So gave them a place to park their truck. We had food that we didn't have to worry about, having different people come in all the time and setting all that up. So that relationship worked out really well. So just like Annie said, just continually changing and trying new things.
I think that some businesses that maybe would not have worked together decided that it was worth supporting one another when everybody was down. It felt much more collaborative, for sure. And I think that has now carried over a bit. So I feel more comfortable reaching out to other business owners that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise.
I think I read there were close to 200 craft breweries in Minnesota around 2019. I believe some have closed since then, most likely from the pandemic. Can you forecast a rebound for the industry, or can you crystal ball a little bit the road ahead?
This year especially will be a real turning point for our industry in Minnesota because we've got some key legislation that we're trying to get passed that would be a real benefit to the whole beer industry in Minnesota. So Minnesota is the only state where you cannot sell your own product in 12 and 16 ounce cans out of your tap room, the only state. There's also 5 breweries in the state that cannot sell growlers. that we're the only state that doesn't allow breweries to sell their own packaged product right out of their tap room. So we're trying to get that changed. We'd also like brew pubs to be able to distribute. So that would be in a limited quantities, having breweries like Forager, brew pubs like Forager be able to sell their beer in liquor stores. So there's some of those things that we'd like to get changed. Minnesota's just so far behind in a lot of liquor legislation. We're also faced with an aluminum can shortage. So that's been a real challenge. All of our prices have gone up. A lot of people are seeing that in shipping costs and supply chain and those kind of things. But that's happening. That's happening in the beer industry as well, with the price of our grain, the price of our hops, the price of getting things, the price of transit. Everything is just a little bit more difficult. So we'd like to see the industry rebound, and I think it can. There's a lot of small breweries that are being supported by their local communities, just like we've talked about here in Rochester. I don't see any reason that can't happen, but people need to accept some, maybe price changes and maybe, you can't get things on demand like you used to be able to. So we have to adjust to things like that with all the kind of transitions that COVID's caused.
With Humble Forager, our price for 2022 has gone up about 25%. So we're paying 25% more for across the board, labels, grain, aluminum, the actual brewing process, but we are not able to obviously charge 25% more. So our prices are staying the same. So that's just cutting into our profit margin a ton. And so I think we'll see what happens in 2022, because one thing that I think happened during COVID is a lot of smaller breweries spent money and time figuring out how to package products, and they focused on obviously selling things to go. That shelf space changed because breweries that didn't care about doing distribution at their local liquor stores had to only focus on that. And so shelf space changed quite a bit. I think we'll see what happens as far as our distribution piece with Humble Forager for 2022. We're hopeful that things stabilize and the wallet fatigue of consumers kind of calms down, but it has been so far in 2022, everyone's been a little cautious, I think.
You are both leaders in the craft beer industry in Minnesota, and you both serve on the board of directors of the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild. Don, you currently serve as president of the Guild, so some added responsibility. What support does the Guild provide to the industry, and what are its current priorities?
The Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild is an advocacy trade group that supports breweries and brew pubs across the state of Minnesota. Right now, if you're interested in the legal priorities, we have our Drink Local bill. Monday was the first day of session. So we're asking constituents in your region to reach out to your legislators and support that Drink Local bill. And that will help really the Minnesota craft beer industry come in line with the rest of the nation, because we are so far behind.
And that gets back to the packaging piece you mentioned earlier, right?
Packaging, and then and a few other pieces, but packaging is really the main focus of those priorities. And then we provide advocacy in a lot of different ways with resources. A lot of our businesses are really small mom and pop shops where, your owner is also brewing the beer and, maybe sometimes running the tap room and doing HR and everything else. And so we provide resources to kind of guide those small businesses in areas where maybe they don't have that support internally. So hooking them up with an HR consultant or hooking them up with a legal consultant or linking them to somebody in the trade industry that needs advice on packaging or, things like that. So we also have several festivals that we operate throughout the year, and those are to market Minnesota craft beer. So they're super fun. A lot of collegial kind of people, in the industry get together. But then it's also a good way for people to try beers across the state of Minnesota that they haven't been able to try in one place.
Don, in 2021, Little Thistle was awarded a bronze medal at the Great American Beer Festival for your dark lager beer. I'm not going to pronounce the name, so I'll have you do that in a minute. This is a prestigious and one of the most sought-after awards in the industry, and the first medal for Rochester. What does an award like this mean for your business, and how do you capitalize on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're still trying to figure out how to capitalize on it. The beer is called Schwarzenlager, and it is a dark lager, like you mentioned. And interestingly enough, the gold medal was also won by a Minnesota brewery, Forgotten
Nice.
Star, up in
Very nice.
in the Twin Cities. And so Minnesota has a strong game in the dark lagers. What it means is it is prestigious because it is quite heavily judged. So it's judged by a panel of experts on style and very traditional style of beer with the German dark lager. For our brewers, it really is kind of a sign that, they're doing something right. And I think after that, the long, hard couple of years that we've had, it's really a reward to have, be able to stand on a stage with breweries across the United States and say, wow, we have one of the best beers in the country in our German dark lager. How do we capitalize on that? It just reassures people, I think, when they come in the door that they see, some of the awards that we've won and Forager's won some too, and say that, okay, well, we're going to have good beer here. It's cool for Rochester. Rochester has such an awesome craft beer scene that we're proud to be part of that, and we feel like we've represented Rochester in that way.
Annie, in 2020, the online platform RapeBeer examined more than 715,000 beers from over 35,000 brewers from around the world and awarded humble Forager Brewery with the best new brewer in Wisconsin. That sounds like great quality assurance for your beer.
That is a good way to put it. As I said, we opened at the very beginning of COVID, and it's really easy to be at Forager and ask someone sitting at the bar if they like the taste of this beer or that beer, what they'd like to see different. When you open a brewery during a pandemic and you don't have a tap room, you would basically just have to creep around liquor stores and ask people if they've tried it and what they think. And there were no festivals, and so we would all discuss it on the team at Humble Forager and try things and have other people try it. But it was just our opinion and in our small group. And so we would obviously read reviews on Untappd and different things online on different social platforms. But to have that awarded was great because then it didn't seem like we just thought it was going well, that a lot of people really supported Humble Forager. So it was great, especially during COVID times when it is hard to get feedback.
In May of this year, 2022, the largest craft brewing gathering will take place in Minneapolis for the Craft Brewers Conference, which I think is the first time in Minnesota. This is a big deal. What does this conference mean for Minnesota and your respective breweries?
The Craft Brewers Conference is a brewing and technical conference where it really is for the brewing industry to learn and get some education, and also often the technical training that they can't get within their small businesses. And it's also an opportunity to talk amongst yourselves and have those collaborative kind of, I think that happens in the scientific world where you have other scientists to bounce ideas off of. But in the beer world, it's the same. But the Craft Brewers Conference is a really great opportunity for brewers to come together and do that, or anybody in the brewing industry, really. And it is a big deal. It's a big deal to be in the state of Minnesota. It's a big deal to be able to highlight what's going on in the Minnesota craft beer industry. And so for our breweries, we have, knock on wood, that this is happening, that we've got a tour coming to Rochester and it'll just be people from the brewing industry. So for us, it's
part of the conference.
It's aside from the conference, but the guild is
okay.
Facilitating that. And so it'll be a Monday, a tour bus full of brewing industry people from around the United States that are going to come and check out our beer, check out our space, get to talk to our brewers and our taproom folks. And so it is quite an honor to have, people from the industry who want to come and see your space. So anytime you're at a brewery, you can either identify yourself as a fellow brewer or not. And this is the people that are coming because they want to be in your space. So it's pretty cool.
That's around the same time or just before the conference?
It'll be the conference starts on the Tuesday and it'll be the Monday.
Okay, in May. All right.
Yep.
We are doing a little a beer release the weekend before as well, just because we've been to conferences and oftentimes people will come to town prior for their staff to enjoy it and check out breweries that they're interested in. And so our hope is that we will attract some of those brewers from around the nation to come down the weekend before, hang out, see all the breweries in Rochester, and enjoy our space.
In 2012, Rochester had just one microbrewery and now has grown to 5. In addition to Little Thistle and Forager, there's Kinney Creek, Life's Too Short, LTS, and Thesis Beer Project. Seems to me there's a great opportunity to capitalize on the growing craft beverage scene in Rochester, Minnesota.
It would just be a matter of us all working together collaboratively to focus on trying to get people to come to Rochester and see it as a craft beer community. I think we were talking about that before COVID, and then COVID kind of like
upended
threw
that.
everyone off, and now I think we need to reconvene because we were working together. Dawn and I hosted a beer festival. In 2018 maybe 2019. And so we were working collaboratively together, and it had the beer festival showcased many Minnesota breweries, and we were working with the local breweries as well. And I think that we were starting to have those conversations, and then things just happened. But I think that's something we should for sure revisit.
We're fortunate to have, Forager, as you pointed out, has national recognition and international recognition now as one of the top kind of sought after destination breweries in the country. So we see that when people are flying in to get Forager beer on their beer releases, and we see the after effects of that at Little Thistle. And, it's good. We love that. We want, there to be a thriving craft beer community, and it's good for the whole craft beer community here in Rochester. So, and we feel like, with the 5 breweries, everybody's got something a little different to offer. Kenny Creek has a really cool tap room, and they've got their seltzer program. LTS is doing like some really solid beers, and they have a really cool little food truck and outside space. Thesis Beer Project has got live music and like some really cool, like up and coming, fantastic acts. They have our taproom manager is actually performing tonight at Thesis. She's an incredible musician. So that's where we'll be tonight, hanging out. And then Forager's got their awesome restaurant. And then we've got our outdoor space, and we, try to do a lot of other stuff too. So I think, every brewery has something different to offer, and we want to be that place where people can come for craft beer and spend the weekend. And then they can see what we have to offer as far as art and culture and live performances and, stay in one of our awesome hotels and make Rochester actually a destination for people that are coming outside of medical concerns, because that's what everybody thinks about Rochester, Minnesota for, is the Mayo Clinic. So if we can help facilitate that by being a strong craft beer community, then we're all for it.
I think one of the things that always impresses me about tap rooms is the camaraderie that you can have there, and also certainly you have to be 21 to drink beer, but you see so much family bonding, and that tap rooms also attract a lot of families for activity. Do you see that?
Yeah, my husband is from Scotland, so that's Little Thistle is the flower of Scotland. So that was the motivation behind our name. But he grew up in that pub environment where your whole family went to the pub, and the parents had a beer, and that was just kind of the lifestyle. And I think Rochester has a lot of up and coming families. People come here to work, and then they get married, and then they start having families, and you want to still be able to socialize and do those things that you did that you had fun doing before you had children. Breweries and brew pubs provide kind of that environment where it's not as contained as a restaurant. You can kind of, get away with a little bit more. Nobody cares if your kid is a little bit loud. I mean, maybe they do it for a jerk because they're trying to enjoy dinner, but, and you have like an activity to go to. You can go to the food truck, or you can go listen to music, or you can, sit outside and play games. It is very family friendly, and we like to host events that are more family focused. So it gives people in the community an opportunity everybody can come out and enjoy.
100%. We've always focused on family friendly events. We've hosted free sleigh rides and different art events for kids, Halloween parties, different music events are based around children. And if you come to Forager, I would say 25 to 30% of our customers are under 10 years old. Just like Dawn said, you can throw stuff on the ground. You can be kind of naughty. Nobody cares. You can run around. It's a very casual environment. And I think that families see that as somewhere that no one wants to take their children out to dinner and then have them embarrass them or throw a fit in a quiet restaurant. I think that Little Thistle and Forager are trying to create that environment that is very family friendly.
You both have done a great job, especially during some challenging COVID times. So thank you for being our guest today. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about your breweries, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Growing Destinations podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. This podcast is brought to you by Experience Rochester. Find out more about Rochester, Minnesota and its growing arts and culture scene, its international culinary flavors, and award-winning craft beer by visiting experiencerochestermn.com.